Hello and welcome to 10 by 9, where 9 people have up to 10 minutes each to tell a true story from their own life. I'm Paul Dorn, and this is the 10 by 9 podcast. In the month of June, Belfast was blessed with two 10 by 9 events. Our monthly Black Box evening, which featured on pod 319 New Horizons, but also we had a special event in one of the most amazing venues that I've ever been in, a building called Riddel's Warehouse in the city centre. A giant Victorian hardware storeroom that is being saved from dereliction and is hopefully going to become an arts and community space. It is a vast cathedral to Victorian commerce, and so we were honoured to be part of an exhibition there called Outpourings. I would suggest looking it up, as I couldn't begin to do it justice. Suffice to say, we had a brilliant evening.
Dennis the Menace was my particular favourite, and he had the one thing I wanted more than anything as a 9-year-old. He had a catapult.
Never snitch. You must never snitch. He wagged his knife in my direction as he ate. Keep your head down. The knife continued to slice through the air like a conductor's baton.
So it was all communities, all genders and all abilities. It was planned and intentional, truly integrated school violence.
Now the theme was When I Was Young, which you might have got a hint of in our clips, and it evoked many memories and much laughter. So anyway, that's enough from me. Let's get to the stories. And first up, here's George Sproule.
It all started with the Beano. I used to get a copy delivered every single Thursday. Dennis the Menace was my particular favourite, and he had the one thing I wanted more than anything as a 9-year-old. He had a catapult. I asked my mum to get me one. I asked Santa Claus. I even asked my too kind aunt, but they all very firmly said, no. We had a caravan at Ballyferris, which is just down the road from Ballywalder, to which we decamped every summer once school closed, and where we ran free for 8 glorious weeks. A weekly trip into Malile was usually needed for groceries and odd essentials, and we could go into the ice cream shop with our own money. And one day, there it was on the shelf. A catapult just like Dennis's. The deed was quickly done, money changed hands, and it was mine. Back to the caravan on the 3:45 bus and deal with the fallout. Mother was not happy. And there followed a lecture about windows, cars, small children, dogs, and so on. But I didn't care. I had my catapult. The first time I put a stone into it and let fly, I managed to remove the skin from the knuckle on my thumb. This was harder than it looked, but with practice I soon got the hang of it and started to acquire some accuracy from close range by the end of the summer. Now, this was 1968. The date's important. By October, the troubles had kicked off. And by the time we were back at the caravan in July 69, restrictions were beginning to bite. After a riot on the Newtonards Road featuring a catapult and a lot of ball bearings, the game was up and they were outlawed. Mine just disappeared from the cupboard. I was gutted. Anyway, skip forward to July 1973 and enter Trevor, stage left. He was a year older than me, and we used to meet up and cross from the caravan site through the field to the old wartime coastal observatory building. It's long gone now. Just beyond it was a sandbank that led directly from the road to the beach. We would lie back on the sand and talk nonsense for hours. One evening he turned up with a portable cassette player. This was a quantum leap game changer moment. And it had a Led Zeppelin tape in it. I still get chills with the memory. He pressed play and the driving guitar and drums of the Immigrants song burst from the speaker. I was mesmerized. Then he played a masterstroke. From the inside pocket of his denim jacket, he took out a catapult. I blinked. They were illegal. Where did you get that? I asked him. I made it. A lad in my class showed me how to do it with a wire coat hanger, he replied. Game changer number 2. A quick examination showed that it wasn't that hard. A few bends, some tape, and lots of rubber bands. Why had this never occurred to me before? We began to form a plan. I needed to go into production. A few days later, we had to go back up home for a laundry day. While my mum was occupied with a twin tub, I sneaked a handful of hangers and disappeared into the garage. A few bends and twists in the vise with a pair of pliers, and there it was. I made 4 in quick succession, 1 for each of the lads down on the caravan site, and then wondered. After a lot of manipulation and foul language, I managed to braid together 2 hangers and twist them into a very large version, which was going to take a lot of elastic and probably 2 people to make it work. I hid everything in my shoe bag and got it down to Ballyferris unnoticed, then hid the lot under the caravan. Next day, we convened to experiment. It became apparent that stones were too hard to fire from the elastic without a slingshot piece, a design oversight on my part. We needed different ammo. So next day, a trip to Malile resulted in a bag of netting staples, which worked spectacularly well. So well that we soon had to stop shooting at each other when we had to pull one out of wee Stevie's leg, leaving him with what looked like a snake bite to explain to his mum. Our attention turned to the big one, and we worked out a way that 2 people could operate it. One lay on the ground, and me, being the tallest, would hold it with both hands up and out in front, tilting my head well out of the way, kind of like this. Trevor got onto the ground, slotted in a staple and pulled back the 6 feet of connected elastic while I prayed. I felt the whoosh as the staple sizzled past my ear, mercifully missing my hands, and disappeared into the evening sky and seemingly into orbit. There was a pause, and then a faint doing noise from about 2 fields away. We looked at each other and grinned. We need heavier ammo for this, I said. A quick troll on the beach unearthed a bit of driftwood with a few hefty nails in it. Some bashing with a heavy stone on a flat rock resulted in a very usable batch of heavier staple-shaped ammo. We tried again. I was sure I was going to lose a thumb, but I wasn't about to give up. We faced the opposite direction and let fly. The whoosh was more substantial, and again there was an agonizing pause, and then nothing. Try again. It must have flown off course. Bent, rusty nails aren't the most stable projectiles. Again, prayers were offered to the god of thumbs, and we let fly. The volume of the down astounded even us. Heaven only knows what it sounded like in the caravan whose roof it careened off. We fell onto the ground and laughed so hard wee John took an asthma fit. We decided it was really too risky to continue and reluctantly retired the beast. We needed a new challenge, something to test our skill, accuracy and marksmanship without somebody's eye coming out. What about trying to hit the traffic? Trevor suggested. Genius. Timing and accuracy, the perfect test. Next day we raced to the sand dune, where a quick point system and firing order was worked out. Buses and lorries were easy. Vans harder, so more points. Cars harder still, so even more points. Landing one on a motorbike was the holy grail and would win outright. We were a bit tentative at first, but grew in confidence as the afternoon wore on. When a bus came past, we all popped up and peppered the side of it. It must have sounded like getting hit with grape shot. A few cars came past, one fast motorbike, and then some lorries. I was up next. From our right came a metallic green Hillman imp heading towards Ballywalter. Please tell me you don't have a Hillman imp. He came past at a fair lick. I popped up, let fly, and as I did so, I registered the fact that the passenger window was down. The staple flew in and whacked him on the ear. There was a screech of brakes, and he stopped. He stopped and got out and started to run back down the road. "Scarborough!" I yelled. My mates seemed reluctant to move, not grasping the gravity of the situation. "Just frickin' run, he's coming after us!" We slid down the bank, bolted across the rough field, and made it through the hole in the hedge into the caravan site proper. He chased us the whole way, and then realised that once we were in the site and split up, he had no chance. And his car was sitting in the road, unlocked and unattended. This was 1973. Later, one of the lads saw his car parked outside the site office, but we were fairly sure he wouldn't be able to pick us out. As a precaution, we lay low, buried the evidence, and went fishing off the rocks for a few days, out of sight. We left the catapults buried in the hole, and when it came the end of the summer, they were forgotten about in the clear-up to go home. When the site was extended and the ground landscaped, they'll have been well and truly buried. I was never able to see a man in a Hillman imp in quite the same way again. Mind you, I did wonder if the staple had got stuck in his ear. That would have been worth a shed load of points.
Thanks, George. I hated catapults all too often on the receiving end of paper pellets. But thanks for that blast from the past, and believe it or not, that weapon of choice will appear again later on. If, like George, you want to tell your story at 10by9, then go to 10by9.com and get in touch via the submissions page, or email me directly at 10by9belfast@gmail.com. Be sure to have a look at our guidelines beforehand, please, and I look forward to hearing from you. Now, just before our second story on the follies of youth, if you hear some faint background noises during the stories, that's the seagulls showing their appreciation. Anyway, here's our second storyteller. It's Richard Brown.
I stared along the tree-lined avenue towards a large, 3-story red brick building. The frontage was impressive, with numerous towers and turrets. From first sight of what was to be my school and home for the foreseeable future, it was very imposing. My mother drove slowly along the avenue and stopped just before the courtyard, where pupils, teachers, and parents were gathering. She turned in her seat and looked at me for a second before she spoke. "You'll make friends quickly. You'll hardly have time to think about us." This behaviour was most strange for her, and I didn't really know how to react. All I knew was that it was awkward, and I wanted it to stop. "I'll be okay." I said this as if I hadn't a care in the world. I was a master at masking my true feelings to avoid awkwardness and embarrassment for the other person. An odd skill acquired by the age of 12, but an insight into the dysfunctional world I inhabited in those formative years of my life. I did mind, though. This world that I was to be thrust into had weighed heavily for quite some time. I didn't believe it would be okay, and I doubt she believed it either. "Honestly, Richard, I interrupted her. "I know, Mum." I opened the door and slid off the seat, stepping out onto the tarmac. "It's for the best," I said mockingly. My parents had said this numerous times during those final weeks of summer. My father had not made the journey, nor had he seemed to have given much thought to the choosing of this new school. An English boarding school with a rich naval history and heritage? I had shown no interest in the English, nor indeed the Navy. I was 12. It was 1976. The Troubles were in full swing, and this would prove to be a rod for my back. A lot of the pupils' parents served in the military, And the fact that I was 12, a petrol-bombing, stone-throwing Paddy, who devised plans late into the night to overthrow the British Empire, would make for tricky navigation. My father and I had said our goodbyes at a restaurant before I left. Never one to miss the opportunity of a captive audience, he imparted pearls of wisdom of his own experiences at public school and how to survive. Never snitch, you must never snitch. He wagged his knife in my direction as he ate. Keep your head down. The knife continued to slice through the air like a conductor's baton. If you get into a fight, pick the biggest boy and give him a damn good thumping. The rest will fold. He wagged his clenched fists in a very unconvincing manner. I doubted my father had ever really been in a fight. Once, when he was in the middle of one of his drinking episodes, his brother had punched him, causing his ear to bleed. True to form, my father didn't wash his ear for days, hoping someone would ask him what had happened. Then he could go into a blow-by-blow account of how his own brother, his own flesh and blood, had subjected him to a vicious assault and left him for dead. On another occasion, my uncle had split my father's top lip, no doubt been subjected to another unprovoked attack. The injury was so severe that he was unable to whistle at the same level of excellence he had before. No doubt a career on stage accompanying the great Joseph Locke and subsequent fame and fortune sadly denied. Never steal. It was back to the knife waving. Never cry. You must never show weakness. I stared blankly at my father. I was more intrigued by the small piece of food that dangled from his moustache, waiting for it to drop or be inhaled with the next forkful. Are you listening to me? He rolled his eyes. Just be polite. Don't be a smart arse, or you'll end up with a warm arse. Little did I know how excruciatingly accurate this statement would be in the coming years. These were only a few brief footnotes of my father's advice. None of it seemed to settle my nerves. It sounded like I was about to step into the pages of Thomas Hughes' classic Tom Brown's School Days. That evening had just been as awkward as the car journey with my mother, and I was desperate to escape both. My mother and I said our goodbyes, and I watched her car lurch repeatedly down the avenue before disappearing through the gates. She had seemed uncomfortable and rushed, so I let her go without exposing how I really felt about her leaving me, or how I had thought this was the worst decision in the world. I stood alone, staring at the gate. I was more than a little overwhelmed by the sequence of events and felt a familiar knot in my stomach. I took one end of my school trot and began to drag it towards the school. The noise was deafening as it scraped across the tarmac. I really hadn't thought this through. I looked ahead to see other children being hugged and kissed by their parents. Why did they not look like they were heading to the gallows? Everybody seemed to turn and look as I entered the courtyard, the loud scraping of the trunk signalling my arrival. I dropped the trunk and sat down on one end. My head hung low, trying to avoid eye contact with anyone who was by now certainly looking in my direction. I felt my face redden. My father's words rattled through my head. Never cry, never show weakness. I took a deep breath. A teacher walked over and stood in front of me, his shoulders draped with a long black cloak and a mortarboard perched on his head. Small half-moon spectacles sat on his long and pointed nose. A long silver chain looped down from one side to his breast pocket. He had a clipboard in one hand and a rather impressive pen in the other. "Stand up, boy." I got to my feet. "Name?" I sensed a little more urgency. Sir Richard Brown." The teacher tapped his pen on the clipboard and stared for what seemed an uncomfortably long time. "Unless you have been knighted, which I very much doubt, you shall refrain from calling yourself Sir Richard Brown." "So let's start again, shall we? Name, Sir Brown, Brown, sir." The teacher glared over the top of the clipboard, unsure as to whether he indeed had a smart arse on his hands. He sighed and then summoned a boy to his side. "Scriven, come here." A tall, slim boy bounced over to us. He had the obligatory severe beginning-of-term haircut. I also noticed he had an exceptionally large feet with tremendously sturdy-looking black shoes. Scriven slipped in beside the teacher like an eager Labrador waiting for its next command. "Show our esteemed guest to his quarters. Hawkins House, dorm 4. And Scriven, be sure to be on your best behaviour. After all, it's not often we have a knight of the realm amongst us. He glared over his spectacles and down his long nose. Scriven looked back and forth between us, waiting for the punchline. None was forthcoming. We lifted the trunk and proceeded into the school. We passed along corridors and up flights of stairs. The heavy smell of varnish, wax and polish hung in the air. Walls were festooned with oil paintings of military dignitaries, coats of arms and heads of various wild animals, trophies of a bygone era. We reached the dorm and dropped the trunk beside one of 12 beds. This is you here. Unpack and put your stuff in this wardrobe. Scriven pointed and took a second to get his breath back. That's my bed. We're going to be neighbours, he smiled. Look, it isn't all that bad. I've been here for years. I'll show you the ropes. Scriven tried to reassure me. I need to get back to Toole, or Mr. Betteridge. Don't ever call him Toole, or you'll get 6 of the best. Why do you call him Toole? I asked naively, on account that he has a rather large tool. I must have looked confused. A big cock. Scriven turned and headed for the door. I could hear him laughing and the clumping of his big, sensible shoes as he made his way along the polished wooden floors. I stood dazed and overwhelmed. Jesus Christ, 6 of the best? This was my entry into an illustrious academic career, which saw me attain 2 O-levels. Art and divinity, RE to the unwashed masses. A healthy smoking habit and a propensity to quaff large amounts of alcohol. As I said, this was not a well thought out plan. A damning quote on a school report by the illustrious Toole read, "Richard is his own gravedigger." A bygone time when teachers' personalities could be revealed in the report's comments box. I'm glad to report I neither joined the Navy nor became a gravedigger.
Thanks, Richard. That really did bring to mind Tom Brown's school days, and what brilliant portraits of your parents. You really brought them to life with very few words. I hope you'll be back with us again soon. Now, just a very quick thank you to all of you who help keep 10x9 going, whether you donate via Patreon or at our live events. Either way, thank you. I'll be using some of those donations to cover the costs of a very special 10x9 in August here in Belfast to coincide with the All-Ireland Fleadh, because what goes better with Irish traditional music than the Irish tradition of storytelling? Be sure to check us out on Wednesday, August the 5th at the Black Box. Okay, let's get on with the third story, and who would have thought the catapult played such a central role in childhood? Fiona O'Neill will now explain.
I want to tell you about a perilous journey I used to take when I was young, filled with dangers fit for a Greek epic, taking the school bus home from Magherafelt to Cookstown. I told my horrified husband about this the other day, and he could not believe what 1980s teenagers got up to. The worst thing that happened to him was when a big boy ran into him by accident once and knocked him over. But he's not from Mid-Ulster. We would start from Broad Street. This was a particularly dangerous place during the snow when, instead of simply hurling insults across the road, folk hurled snowballs with stones in them, but that's normal. When the bus would arrive, everyone would pile around in a crowd, making use of hockey sticks, camogie sticks, ring binders, school bags and DM boots. Sometimes a light and resourceful junior would hand their baggage to their friend, and they would literally climb over people to get to the back seat first. I wasn't agile enough for that and had to wriggle through with everyone else. Once a civilian tried to get on, a middle-aged woman of about 35, and she hissed, "You don't deserve to get on the bus." But I was being half strangled and it wasn't my fault. I kept quiet about it to my parents and the teachers. We all did. If they had known, they would have put a stop to it. There were many episodes of violence. To be clear, this was not sectarian. The big boys and girls from all the schools in the area would torture the younger ones. It was a collaborative effort involving uniforms of all colours, grey and blue, black and red, maroon and yellow. So it was all communities, all genders and all abilities. It was planned and intentional, truly integrated school violence. On the first day of second year, the fourth year boys from my school, the grey and the blue, manhandled my shoe off, and one of them dangled out the window all the way along the dual carriageway past the cheese factory. This boy used to sit at the head of my dinner table, and any time I cheeked him, he'd say, "No dessert for you tomorrow." I never let on I was annoyed, but my younger brother, who had only started school that day, was aghast. I knew they wouldn't drop it out, and sure, I got it back in Cookstown and a load of attention too. These same boys used to grab our scarves, tie them between seats, and take turns to spit Mars bars on them. And we would give them a wipe with a tissue and get on with it, no thought for our poor mothers and their ongoing laundry campaign. The girls from the black and red school had a low-level war of attrition with us over months, pushing, thumping, elbowing, insulting, telling us to get out of the back seat. Tensions built up into a massive physical fight one evening. A fifth-year girl, who used to be quite nice to us before this event, put the sole of her foot against a scab on my knee and scraped it off slowly, while others held my hands and pulled my hair. I still have a scar on my knee, but it was the betrayal that got me. I was not alone in this. My friends all succumbed, but I'm not here to talk about them. In third year, the catapults took off. Again, this was a collaborative effort where fourth and fifth years promoted their great matter of controlling the bus. For weeks, we were hit with chewed up pieces of paper which would stick in our hair or on our clothes. One summer Friday evening, the bus was relatively empty as it was the exam period. My friends and I got a seat each to spread out and luxuriate in the sun and shout smart remarks back at the big boys. A boy from the maroon and yellow school came right up close to my face, aiming his catapult and telling me not to be so smart. I remember him smiling down at me, and I didn't think he would really let fire, but he did. Paper pellets are tiny, but this thump in my left eye felt so huge it was like I'd been punched in the eye by an elbow. I put my head onto the back of the seat and my hand over my eye, and it went quiet. And then somebody said, "Is she crying?" I wasn't. I was trying to hold my eye in, but I could still say, "I'm not crying." The battle died down. Maybe the boys were worried. Maybe they were bored. My eye throbbed all the way home. It was really sore, and I had to tell my parents. So I told them my friend accidentally hit me in the eye with her elbow. They thought this was a strange thing to happen. How would somebody's elbow get into your eye, even if you were ligging about? Daddy checked my eye, and it looked all right. I faffed about through the evening. The throbbing continued, and I finally owned up and told them about the catapult. Why did I not tell them straight away? Why did I feel like I was owning up? If you've ever been on a 1980s school bus, you'll know why, but you won't be able to explain it. Daddy took me to Dungannon Hospital, and a nice doctor said I'd be all right and gave me a bandage to rest my eye. No disaster, no long-term effects, and I got told off for telling lies, but that was fair enough. The upshot was that my parents wrote a letter to the vice principal saying I'd been hit in the eye by a missile thrown by a pupil from another school, and what was he going to do about it? He took me to his office and listened with a concerned face while I put him over the whole story. I think he roasted the boys from our school too, but these particular ones were always getting roasted. I'm assuming he went to the other schools about it, because that evening I got on the bus to a pantomime of multicoloured blazers, making barbed comments about it not annoying the third-year girls because they tell. My friends all nudged me, and we smirked and narrowed our eyes at them, secure in our power for one bus journey. Sure, what did I care about them? You might as well tell the teacher, because it's all good attention.
Fiona, thanks so much. I remember the chaos and the hierarchy of the school bus so clearly. Thanks for making it so funny too. And that is it for this edition of the 10 by 9 podcast. You can keep up with all our upcoming events and themes by having a look at our website. That's 10by9.com. Plan your visit to the Black Box if you've not been yet. And don't forget about our special FLA event in August, that's the 5th of August, as well as several extra events round and about. 10 by 9 is on the socials, of course. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and I won't fill your feed with nonsense. You can always get in touch via email at 10by9belfast@gmail.com. Thanks to everyone who helped make this 10 by 9 happen. All the people involved with the Outpourings exhibition, especially Vittoria Cafola. It was a real honour to be involved. 10 by 9 would be nothing without our amazing audience. You really made this evening something special in a very special place. And thanks to everyone who told their story that night, but especially George Sproule, Richard Brown and Fiona O'Neill. I'm Paul Dorn, and I'll be back with another podcast soon. But for now, bye-bye.